Number 10. KLARA MAUEROVA. KLARA MAUEROVA is one of the scariest human beings to have ever walked the earth. She's a person of great evil, a terrible mother, and a cannibal. Yes, you heard that correctly. KLARA was a member of the worst religious cult that you've probably never heard of. She admitted to locking her son Andre in a cellar, torturing him, and eating him. It all began while KLARA was in university. She met another student named Barbara, a girl of 32 who suffered from something called hypopituitarism. It's a special disorder that delays physical growth. Even though she was 32, she looked like she was a 13-year-old. She was able to use her disability to her advantage and convinced KLARA to let her live with KLARA and her children. Sadly, Barbara was also completely insane. She convinced KLARA and her sister Katerina to join a religious cult. Everything after that is a little fuzzy. We know that the MAUEROVA sisters were introduced to a cult, but it's unclear why they became so suddenly terrible. KLARA would burn her children with cigarettes. She whipped them with belts, and then she skinned one of her sons and ate his flesh. This went on for about a year, until a neighbor accidentally hacked into a video feed of KLARA's children locked in a cage. He called the police, and the whole thing was over. KLARA and her sister got a combined total of 19 years in jail, while Barbara got away with only 5. And in case you're wondering, both her sons did survive. It's just that now they'll have to live the rest of their lives knowing their mother ate a few pieces of them. Number 9. The Killer Women of KABETE. There is a group of women in central Kenya who are supposedly some of the most dangerous in the world. Ever since anyone can remember, the men in central Kenya have been warned by their parents, friends, and relatives not to marry any woman from KABETE. It's because these women allegedly have a history of murdering their husbands. KABETE is said to have the highest concentration of widows anywhere in central Kenya. The area also happens to have the absolute lowest poverty rate, according to a study in 2005. Not everyone is rich, but they're less poor than the rest of the people in the region. Almost every household is run by a mother or a widow, and a lot of these widows had their husbands perish under unusual circumstances. There's no possible way to confirm these accusations. We do know that many of the women of KABETE are indeed widows. Many of their husbands died before they hit 40, and they all seem to be surprisingly wealthy. But whether they're all a bunch of secretly trained killers, nobody can say. Number 8. Monique MAESTAS. Outside a casino in Nevada, Monique MAESTAS stabbed a little girl to death and left another girl paralyzed. It happened in 2003, shocking the state and the country. Monique stabbed and murdered a 3-year-old girl named Christina Cohen, then severed the spine of her older sister, Brittany Bergeron. At the trial in 2006, Clark County District Judge Donald Mosley called it the most horrendous thing he had ever been involved with. But why did it happen? Monique was only 16 years old at the time of the stabbing. She was a kid herself. Not a baby, but a kid. She and her brother, who was 19 at the time, were looking for drugs. Sadly, they were products of a broken home. They were already hard criminals in their teenage years, and they were hooked on meth. They did a drug deal with the parents of the girls they would soon kill. But when they went back to do their meth, they realized they had been given salt instead. The teens were so mad that they stormed into the trailer, which was parked outside a casino, and started stabbing. But the drug dealers weren't inside. They had left their 2 young girls in the trailer and gone to gamble. It was the kids who became the victims of Monique and her brother's drug-starved stabbing spree. The killers were apprehended right away, and Monique was sentenced to 47 years in jail. Her brother was given life. Number 7. MYRA HINDLEY. MYRA HINDLEY has been called the evilest woman in all of Britain. She's responsible for the Moors murders of the 1960s. She helped to assault, defile, and murder 5 children. She did so with her lover, an equally sick and evil person named Ian Brady. Together, they lured 4 children into their car by offering them rides home. Instead, they took them to Saddleworth Moor, an area of total isolation. and tortured them. Then they buried them right there in the dirt. It's hard to say where Myra's evil intentions began. When she was caught, she blamed the crimes on Ian Bradley, but this was just an act to get herself out of trouble. The truth is that she met Ian when she was 18 and became completely obsessed with him. She knew he was a criminal, but she didn't care. On their first date, Ian took her to see a movie about the Nuremberg trials. He was fascinated by Nazis, and Myra became fascinated with them too. Myra even bleached her hair blonde and started wearing dark red lipstick to look more like a German. Then the crimes started, or at least the plotting of crimes. They thought about how they could do some robberies and get rich, but ultimately decided it would be more fun if they started murdering. In 1963, on July 12th, they picked up Pauline Reed as she was walking to a dance. Pauline was only 16 years old. Her body wasn't found for nearly 20 years. Myra and her husband were finally caught in 1965 after one of their friends had come over to the house to pick up wine bottles. His name was David Smith, and as he waited for the wine bottles, he overheard Ian Brady beating a 17-year-old boy to death with an axe. David called the police, and that was the end of the murdering duo. But here's where things get a little philosophical. The judge who presided over the case called Brady wicked beyond belief, but they didn't think the same thing was true of Myra. Without Ian Brady, the judge believed that Myra would have never resorted to such crimes. But what if it was the other way around? What if Ian would have never resorted to murder without Myra to encourage and help him on the way? Either way, both of them got life in prison and will never get out. Number 6. Jennifer Faith. Jennifer Lynn Faith is a criminal mastermind. She convinced her boyfriend, a veteran with the US Army named Darren Lopez, to kill her husband. She plotted his murder for the day after their 15th wedding anniversary. James Faith, having no idea his wife was secretly planning to murder him, was gunned down by Lopez as the couple walked their dogs. Jennifer made sure the couple was out that day at the designated spot so that she had a good alibi and didn't look suspicious. But in the end, all criminal masterminds are eventually undone. Jennifer looked extremely suspicious when she began providing her secret boyfriend with money and gifts. She had given him a flat-screen television and a couple of credit cards before the murder, and then paid off the rest with over $60,000 that she earned from a GoFundMe campaign. Jennifer had gone on TV and beseeched the public for help in finding her husband's murderer and giving her financial support. But then she used all that money to pay the man who killed her husband. It was all extremely sneaky, but not sneaky enough. And now Jennifer is going to jail. So is her boyfriend, who's been brought up on murder charges. Sadly, we're still waiting until May of 2022 to see what kind of sentence Jennifer gets for her role in James's death. Number 5. RONGZHI. RONGZHI allegedly killed 7 people, one of them being a little girl, before spending 20 years on the run. Lao is a Chinese national arrested at a shopping mall in Xiamen in 2019, where she was selling watches and living under a fake name. She's now been charged with murder, kidnapping, and robbery. Her crime spree began in 1996. She met a businessman named Zhang Kuyi at a nightclub, lured him into a rented apartment, and then murdered him. After the man was dead, Lao and her boyfriend Fa traveled to their victim's home and slaughtered his wife and daughter, seemingly for no reason. In July of that same year, Lao and Fa killed 2 more businessmen in failed attempts to get ransom money from their families. In 1999, Fa was captured and executed for murder and kidnapping, but Lao got away. She managed to fade into obscurity, changing her name and becoming a completely different person for 2 decades. But now that the police have caught up with her, Lao is forced to deal with her ugly past. And considering she's on the wrong side of the Chinese justice system, it's unlikely that she will ever see the light of day again. Number 4. La Flaca III. The first La Flaca to work for the Los Zetas cartel in Mexico was Veronica Mireya. She started out as a police officer, but then signed on to work for the drug cartel. In 2011, she was arrested by the Mexican Marines and charged in numerous murders. Later that same year, Mexican authorities arrested another female cartel assassin named La Flaca on over a dozen murders. Both these women were put behind bars. Then the third La Flaca appeared on the scene. Her name was Jocelyn Alejandra Niño. The third La Flaca became famous when a picture of her was posted on Facebook and Twitter, sporting body armor, a gold chain, and a modified M4 assault rifle. She looked like she belonged on the cover of Vogue. In reality, she was an assassin, active in a violent battle between several different factions of the Gulf Cartel. Her good looks didn't save her from being found by Mexican authorities, chopped up and stuffed into some beer coolers. The hand that had gently held the assault rifle in the provocative photo was severed from the rest of the body and put in a cooler as a message. Nobody knows what exactly happened to her, but it's pretty clear she got into a fight she just couldn't win. Number 3. Gertrude Baniszewski. Gertrude Baniszewski isn't just a criminal, she's an absolute demon. In 1965, she was entrusted with looking after a pair of young girls while their parents were traveling. But instead of being a good caretaker, she tortured one of them to death and nearly killed the other. She didn't do it by herself either. She had help from her children and some kids in the neighborhood. Sylvia Lickens and her sister Jenny were left with Gertrude. Their parents were carnival workers, meaning they were on the road quite a bit. They often struggled to make enough money to care for their kids. Jenny was quiet and had a limp because she suffered from polio. But Sylvia was a lot more confident. She was 16 years old when she got dumped with Gertrude. Everything was fine for about 2 weeks. Then Gertrude went totally crazy. She locked Sylvia in a room and tortured her so severely that we can't even tell you what happened. What we can say is that the torture was so bad that Sylvia eventually couldn't even use the bathroom on her own. Gertrude would invite the neighborhood kids over and allow them to beat Sylvia up for fun. Sylvia was so beaten and weak that on October 26, 1965, she finally died from shock, malnutrition, and a brain hemorrhage. This was after 3 months of unimaginable torture and starvation. She was so bad at the end that she couldn't form intelligible words or move her limbs. Gertrude was eventually brought to justice. She served 20 years and got out on parole in 1985, despite a whole crowd of people outside the prison picketing to keep her inside. Gertrude was set free. Number 2. Griselda Blanco. Griselda Blanco, also known as the Black Widow, was born in Colombia in February of 1943. She died in Colombia in 2012 as one of the most famous female cocaine traffickers in the world. Griselda moved to Miami in the 1970s and became known as the godmother of cocaine. She eliminated her competition with ruthless violence. She was the one who plunged the city of Miami into a period of bloody mayhem known as the Cocaine Cowboy Wars. She was behind numerous murders, including one that involved a shootout at a mall in 1979. All of the violence made her extremely wealthy. She smuggled an estimated 3 tons of cocaine into the US every year, earning roughly $80 million a month. But you can only stay on top for so long. She moved to California in 1984 in fear of her life. The next year, she was taken to New York to face drug charges. She was found guilty, given a sentence of 15 years in prison, but was then implicated in over 200 murders. She was charged with 3 of them, and after 6 years was deported to Colombia. That was when she retired from her life of crime, allegedly. But you can never just walk away from this kind of thing. In 2012, as she was leaving a butcher shop in the city of Medellin, Griselda Blanco was shot by an assassin on a motorcycle and died. Karma? Number 1. La Gata. Shirley Silva Padilla, aka La Gata, has killed at least 2 people and is looking at up to 35 years in prison. She hails from the Peruvian capital of Lima, where she belonged to a gang of thieves called Los Diabolicos. But her brief life of crime came to an abrupt end when she went out on a Wednesday night to get some food. She was visiting a restaurant and the cook didn't give her enough chicken in her rice. The nerve! Instead of simply asking for more chicken, she got up and shot the chef until he was dead. Later on that same night, she shot someone else. Not even in Peru can you get away with murdering 2 people in a major city in one night. Shirley Silva Padilla was arrested and charged with murder. At only 23 years old, she's now stuck in prison until she's an old woman. And all because she didn't get enough chicken. Which of these women do you think is the most terrifying? Let us know in the comments below. And thanks for watching. Be sure to subscribe and check all the other great videos from the channel. See you again soon. Bye!